The United States didn't just clash with Iran recently, it helped create the Iran we see today. Long before sanctions, before nuclear tensions, before leaders like Donald Trump ever stepped into the White House, there was a moment when the US made a decision on Iran that changed everything. A decision that removed a government, reshaped a nation, and quietly set the stage for the conflicts we're still watching today. This isn't just history. This is how it started. In the early 1950s, Iran looked very different. It wasn't a theocracy. It wasn't ruled by clerics. It was a constitutional monarchy with a democratically elected prime minister, much like the UK. Then in 1950, the Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh made one decision that changed everything. He nationalized Iran's oil. For years, Iran's oil had been controlled by foreign companies, especially the British. And despite sitting on massive reserves, Iran saw only a fraction of the profits. So Iran said, "That ends now." To Iranians, it was a moment of pride. To Britain, it was unacceptable. But this wasn't just about oil anymore. This was the Cold War. The US and Britain weren't just worried about losing resources. They were worried about losing influence. Because right next door was the Soviet Union. Even though Mossadegh wasn't a communist, there were growing leftist groups inside Iran. And in Washington, that was enough to trigger alarm. The fear wasn't what Iran was. It was what it might become. So instead of risking it, they decided to act. The plan was called Operation Ajax, a covert mission run by the CIA and British intelligence. But this wasn't an invasion. No tanks crossing borders. No bombs falling from the sky. Instead, they worked from the inside. Money was poured into protests. Newspapers were manipulated. Rumors were spread. Politicians were bribed. Military officers were influenced. Even religious figures were pulled into the chaos. The idea was simple: make the country feel unstable. Make Mossadegh look like the problem. At first, it didn't work. The Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, panicked and fled the country. For a moment it looked like the coup had failed. But then the streets changed. Crowds grew larger. Violence spread. And parts of the military switched sides. Within days Mossadegh was arrested. And just like that, Iran's government was gone. Soon after, the Shah returned. But he didn't come back as a symbolic ruler. This time he ruled with real power, backed strongly by the United States. Iran became one of America's closest allies in the region, a strategic barrier against Soviet expansion. From the outside, it looked like stability. But inside the country something had shifted. People hadn't forgotten what had happened. A leader they chose had been removed. And not from within, but from outside. For the next 2 decades, the Shah tightened his grip. Opposition was crushed. Criticism was silenced. And a powerful security apparatus kept control. To Western governments, Iran looked modern, stable, and even successful. But beneath the surface, there was pressure building. Not just against the Shah, but against the idea that Iran's future had been stolen. And then, in 1979, that pressure broke. The Iranian Revolution, led by Ruhollah Khomeini, and the monarchy collapsed. The Shah fled again. And Iran transformed into something entirely different. An Islamic republic, built in direct opposition to Western influence. What replaced the old system was shaped by everything that came before it. And this is where the story becomes familiar. Because what happened in Iran wasn't unique. Powerful nations have always tried to shape other countries, especially during moments of global rivalry. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union did this repeatedly. Backing leaders, removing governments, influencing outcomes from behind the scenes. But if you zoom out further, this pattern goes back even longer. Empires have always played this game. The Roman Empire expansion supported local rulers to maintain control. European powers during the scramble for Africa redrew borders to suit their interests. Different time periods, same underlying strategy, influenced the system without always appearing to control it. And sometimes, it works. At least in the short term. But the long-term consequences? They don't disappear. They wait. They build. And eventually, they explode. That's the strange thing about history. It doesn't always repeat exactly, but it echoes. The decisions made in 1953 didn't just stay in the past. They carried forward through decades, through revolutions, into the tensions we still see today. And when you look at the world now, at conflicts, rivalries, interventions. You start to notice something familiar. The moves change. The players change. But the game? It often stays the same. So if you want to understand what's happening today, you have to look back at moments like this. Because history has a way of coming back, especially when we forget it. Subscribe for more stories where the past explains the present. Because some of the biggest events shaping our world right now started a long time ago.